Hey watch friends, this is one I've been chomping at the bit to show you for a few weeks now. This is the all-new RZE Endeavour. This is the successor to the watch we recently featured, the RZE Resolute, and RZE did not waste any time answering back, coming up with a second model in their lineup. If you're not familiar with them, I encourage you to check out the Resolute review, have more information there. But basically, this is the founder of, or one of the founders of the company Boulder, Travis Tan, actually started RZE, which originally was Reise. And this is really intended, it's a similar design language, as well as the overall kind of concept of RZE is similar to Boulder, just rugged watches. These particular ones we'll talk about a lot here are lightweight, they're titanium, they have a coating on them that makes them ultra durable. And if you know from watching that review, I absolutely was blown away with how much I liked that Resolute. So I was extremely excited when RZE reached out and gave me the opportunity to check out their latest prototype. So this is, do note, a prototype model. This is loaned into the channel, so I will be returning this watch actually. By the time you're watching this, I will have already sent it along to the next reviewer to check out. So keep that in mind as you're looking through. I do expect that it's going to be similar to the production model. This is usually a production sample when they're at this stage. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into this piece. And I guess with that one, I use it a fair amount, but pun intended, since we did switch over now from a field style watch to, you can see this one is going into the design to a diver design language for this overall piece. So this is going to be very similar, and we will do a comparison throughout with the Resolute, so do stay tuned for that. This one you can see though, if you watch the Resolute video, this is a similar overall styling to that piece. It is more though than just slapping on a dive bezel, so there are some little changes throughout, and we'll talk about those things as we go through this review. So for overall specs, let's go ahead and just quickly go through those. They are, again, going to be very similar to the Resolute, so I do encourage you to check that one out too. And I think these cross-shop very well against each other, and I don't think you can go wrong with either one. So for overall case, this is still coming in at 40.5 millimeters, and that is going to be with the case guard, or the crown guard rather. So that's right here, and then to the flare out here as well. That's straight across there. Without that coming in at this crease, I am getting 39.8 millimeters. And then with the bezel on this one, since this does have a rotating bezel, a dive style bezel, this is coming in at 39.5. So it looks almost like it protrudes, but that's because it cuts in. But as far as compared to the case, it is just a hair skinnier overall for that. And this we'll talk about more for this, but this does have a 120 click unidirectional bezel. But again, we'll look at that in more detail once we get into the specifics. The lugs for this is going to be the exact same as the Resolute. It actually even uses the same bracelet. This is coming in at 20 millimeters for the lugs. It does taper clear down to 16 millimeters, so a fairly heavy taper, though it's executed very nicely, very clean throughout through that. The lug to lug is still going to be exactly the same at 46 millimeters. So effectively, just keep in mind, the case is more or less the same case. There might be some slight tweaks, but fundamentally, it's going to be the same. If you like the Resolute, you'll probably like the Endeavour as well. For thickness, this is one area where you do see a change. So this, and we'll talk about the water resistance in a second, but this does thicken up slightly. So this bumps up to 12.5 millimeters, and I believe it was coming in at around 11.5, 11.6, so roughly 1 millimeter thicker. Still a relatively thin watch, but it is thicker than the Resolute. It is still going to have a flat sapphire crystal on there, so exactly the same as the Resolute, and this does have an inner AR coating on that. Movement. You might have noticed here that this one, unlike the Resolute, does not have a date window at 3 o'clock or anywhere else in the face for that matter. So I'm glad to say they did switch over. They stuck with the Seiko NH movements, but they switched this over from an NH35 to an NH38. So this does have still a screw down crown. Of course, as you would expect for a dive watch, if the field watch had it, the dive watch certainly should. But this now no longer has the two positions, it's just one pop. It does still have the hacking for it, so your second hand will stop when you pop that out. And there's going to be no phantom date position there. So that was a good choice for that. And I'm glad to see, as I've found everything with RZE, they thought these out for all the different execution pieces and did a real great job. For the water resistance, I mentioned that we would circle back to that. You can see this one does bump up. The Resolute was 100 meters. This is coming in at 200 millimeters. So it has, in my opinion, a sufficient range for being considered a dive watch or for being a dive watch style. And it was a nice bump up for a relatively minimal difference in thickness between the two. As far as the weight for this one, so you might be wondering, one of the things that I loved so much about the Resolute was just it was an extremely, extremely light watch. And I can't emphasize that enough. I sent one of my Resolutes to a buddy, so I unfortunately don't have the gray here to show you today. But he was checking that out. I told him over and over again how light it was. I showed it on a scale, and he understands. He has similarly an extensive watch collection. But the first thing he told me is once you put it on wrist, it absolutely, I mean, it defies belief as to just how light these things are, and it's amazing to feel them, though they don't feel cheap at all as a result of that. So with that, the actual weight itself, this does get a slight bump. It's about 4.5 grams heavier. So adding on the bezel and the slight thickness, it's about 4.5 grams heavier. So on the bracelet, this is coming in at 96.5 grams compared to 92 on the Resolute, and that size to my 6.5-inch wrist. And with that, since we're talking about wrist, I'll go ahead and give you a quick glance at that, and we'll look more as we go through the video. So you can see, still fits nicely on there. We'll look at both of those side by side as far as they do have a different presence because of the dial size, because of the bezel, etc. So even though they are similar, there's a lot of differences between the two. For accessories, this is still going to come with the same basic packaging. So you have the nice RZE box, and then inside you have this pouch, and it comes with a nice presentation in there. Check out the Resolute unboxing if you'd like to see more of that. It goes into full detail. I don't want to waste your time for that piece, but that video is available for you if you'd like. As far as the main difference between this, whereas the Resolute came on a canvas strap, this actually comes standard on the bracelet that was optional for the Resolute. It's an option I highly recommend. The bracelet's amazing. We'll talk about that in more detail, but that is standard now. So no additional straps, but it does come on this absolutely excellent bracelet. So let's go ahead and jump right into some of the observations about the actual watch itself now that we have the specs out of the way. So for the dial, one of the things that you'll note is this is still a sand texture. I mentioned a lot in the Resolute video on how I felt like it was more subtle in person. It was a very light sand texture in person, where I think the camera makes it seem heavier than it is. I think the same is true for this. It could just be the coloration on this particular colorway, which this is a dark gray color. It might be picking up black on camera, but it does color shift a lot depending on the light, and we'll try to look at that throughout. We'll have indoor, outdoor, all different kinds of footage of this throughout the video, so I encourage you to stay tuned and check all of that out. The sand texture, I'm not a huge sand dial person, so as far as preferences, I don't really love sand dials generally speaking, but I really do like it on the Resolute. I think it's soft enough and muted enough that when you're just going standard glances in person, it's nice and subtle. This, at least specific colorway, does not have a fume, and I don't believe the other ones do either. I think these are all fixed, as opposed to the Resolute, where it was it had a fume, so a gradient coloration to that. This does have, as I just mentioned, a significant color shift on this. I've noticed at certain angles, it almost picks up like a liquid silver color, like a mercurial kind of effect. It doesn't shift like the forged carbon, where I referenced that as being mercurial. That actually had liquid shift to it. This just picks up that kind of deep coloration, like a nice gunmetal. And then sometimes it's almost a black. Other times it picks up almost a hint of navy blue to it. So it really does shift a lot in the light. Additionally, I mentioned in the Resolute video that they were switching from Reise to RZE Watches, and they'd be switching from this Reise on there to the logo. So now you can see exactly what that looks like side by side between these two. Everybody's going to have a different preference. I know some have reached out and said they prefer this. Some prefer the logo style. Whatever you like, that's what it is now as far as these go. And I personally don't really think you can go wrong. We already mentioned there is no date on this one, so it does not have complication. Nice clean dial appearance though. Let's switch over to the handset. Handset in markers, you can tell it is, of course, a similar pencil style or sword style, whatever you want to call that, for the handset. This, though, one of the things that I was taken with, initially I thought it was the same for the handset, but it is either a slightly broader handset or they just broaden up the lume. But as we'll see in the lume footage, and hopefully it'll translate in camera, they definitely punched up the lume on this. So whereas it was very delicate and subtle lines on the Resolute, still sufficient, still did the job, this absolutely, as you would want in a diver, does have more lume pop to it. Similarly, for the markers, as we go around, they too look like they're the same. throughout, but I think each of these are thickened up. At the 12, 3, 6, and 9, they definitely are thickened up, and that is a noticeable difference between those. But I believe all of the other ones are just slightly thickened up because, as you'll see in the lume, it does definitely appear that it has more lume applied to that. The overall handset, though, is still going to be the same, so still the same style at the base, still a lollipop on the second hand. You still are going to have, in this particular colorway, a satin gunmetal kind of finish, but of course will vary across the colorways. Additionally, this does still have a dual lume, though you'll note this shifts over. So this was a C3 with a BGW9 on the exterior. This now is a BGW9, and this has a light blue lume, which I did talk to Travis, the owner of RZE, and he clarified that that's not a color mix. This is actually coming directly from Superluminova. It's a new finish, or a new lume that they're offering that is the light blue. So this is a direct coloration, so you don't get the reduction that you typically would from some of the colored lumes. While we're talking about colors, let's go ahead and actually pop up on the screen, and we can look at all four of the colorways that are available. So this, as you can see on the screen, there is a gray, a white, a deep navy blue, and a yellow. So here, as I mentioned, we are taking a look at the dark gray. So even if it looks black on camera, this is a dark gray. Really attractive. This is one that I plan to add to my personal collection. Excellent there. So the case, I don't want to spend too much time on that because we've already talked about that at length, but highlighting some of the features, this is going to be, again, the same case, still same great angular design for this, really unique style, still has your drilled lugs on the side here. It is still a bead blasted finish throughout. And most importantly, this is still going to be grade 2 titanium on every surface, including this bezel here. But one of the things that's so cool about this is it has that ultra hex coating, which is their proprietary hardening coating. So you don't have the typical easy scratch nature that you would with titanium. This is actually coming in at around the level of ceramic, so it's about 1200 on the Vickers scale. So even though this doesn't have a ceramic bezel insert, and you can see this is, I believe, a one-piece bezel there. I can't see any separation line or insert. At least this with that coating should still hold up just as well as ceramic does. So that's one of the great durability features with this. Additionally, while we're talking about the bezel, this in terms of lume, as we'll see in the lume footage, only has the pip that looms up, so that lights up, so you have that triangle pip there. And then throughout all of these numerals, they went with, I believe, a black enamel for that. It has a nice gloss to that, very prominent, but I love the way that that integrates in, really clean appearance, great look, love the bezel. And while we're looking at that, let's take a little better look. So you have kind of a coin style edge, a little bit of a thicker coin edge for that. This does kind of cut into there, though that is still one piece. And let's check out that bezel click. Oh man, so satisfying. Has a real nice pronounced, very tactile feel to it. Real nice sound to that. Bezel alignment, I found this one's maybe a half or a quarter click off for overall bezel. If you notice at the pip. You can adjust that manually, as I just shifted it over there. Does not have bezel play. That's excellent. I'm sure on the production one, they will get this cleaned up. Again, this is a prototype, but that only having a quarter click off or so and being able to manually adjust to that, not ideal, but really not a big deal either. I did want to note that, though, as far as those little pieces. As far as the crown, it's still the same excellent crown that I loved on the Resolute, and I still love it on the Endeavour. It's a gear style shape to that. It does have this real nice raised signed logo, so instead of being carved in, this is a reverse for that, so it's actually popping out for you. This is still 7.5 millimeters, though again, as I mentioned there, it does feel larger, very easy to grip. It is a screw down crown, has extremely smooth for the threads, so it's very cleanly machined, and you can feel that in usage. All the way around, just excellent addition to that. Loved it on the Resolute, still love it now. For the case back, this is going to be basically the exact same as the Resolute. If we can get this to focus in here, of course, you'll have a little bit of different text on that just to align with this new model. This camera does not want to cooperate here. So you can see, of course, the NH38 instead of the NH35, those kind of things. But the coolest thing here, check that out, 0000500. It definitely is an honor to be holding on to the prototype, so really cool. Love that. Of course, that won't be one that be in the production there, but love that I got to check this out. The bracelet we already talked about, I've already raved about, goes from 20 down to 16. This also is going to be your grade 2. It is still going to have the Ultra Hex coating, so you're going to have great wear resistance. As you can see, it is an H-link. It is a very nicely and cleanly tapered H-link throughout there. It does have a pop clasp, so this is not going to be a double pusher. That does just have your pop there to open that up. Additionally, it does have 4 micro adjust on the side, so you're able to get that dialed in. And then this does have screw links screw for the links there to hold those in. So really nice. I was able to get this size perfectly, just like I was with the Resolute. So now we've talked a lot about the Resolute throughout. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of the comparisons between, because I mentioned that there are more differences. So of course, let's set these down and look visually right off the bat. You can notice because of the fixed bezel versus the die bezel, you can see the dial has, I feel, a little more presence on the Resolute than it does. So you have a little more case presence on the Endeavour. You have a little more dial presence on the Resolute. So they do wear differently. Additionally, some of the differences between these, that at least that I noticed, and these may not be exhaustive, but the markers. So right off the bat, you can see different style markers. We already talked about the thickness, but look at the 12 o'clock. You have the double baton style markers there versus having a nice large single. Down at the 3, 6, and 9, it is significantly larger, whereas these were uniform with just having the difference in the dual lume. This is actually larger at those and still has the dual lume for those. Additionally, as we go on the exterior and look at the perimeter, you can see this has your numerals at the 4 positions there, whereas this does not. This just has dashes or lines instead of, so you have dots just as here, but then instead of numerals, you have a triangle, and then you have lines for the other remaining three positions there. As far as date versus no date, you can see what that is. Of course, everybody's going to have a different preference there. I like both of them. I like having a date function. I think it's well integrated here, but I also like the cleanness of this and the uniformity, and that's true in the shots that we'll see for the lume footage as well. With the lume, check out that coloration. So I mentioned the difference here between the C3 and the BGW9. You can see this does pick up different coloration. Each colorway does differ a little bit, so check out that pick earlier in the video to see some of those. But wait till you see the lume shot. You'll see what I'm talking about as far as the difference here. So now let's go ahead and take a look at these in some outdoor footage. I took these to a conservatory and checked it out in some different interesting for outdoor footage. And then after that, we'll go ahead and transition over to the lume, where you can see the difference between these two. Transitioning over to outdoor lighting, you can get a little more of an idea as to what the coloration looks like. You can see a little bit of the color shift, though it's hard to fully appreciate it on camera. You can certainly pick up that light blue, how it pops on this particular colorway as well. Transitioning over into some indoor lighting, this is in a greenhouse, so you're getting indirect indoor light. You can see, of course, a koi fish in the background there, but additionally, this gives you a little bit of a different sense of how it plays with the light. And now I'm going to transition over to just a few still shots, and this gives you an idea as to it in its natural setting, what you can expect and experience there. As you can see with each of these shots, and feel free, of course, to pause them on your screen as well, it really looks great in every setting that I put it in. Now taking a look at the lume, you can see the Endeavour here on the left and the Resolute on the right. As you can see, the Endeavour just really has more of a pop to it, in addition to having the different coloration with the shift between the BGW9 versus the C3 being the prominent color, so of course going from a green to a blue for the hue there. You can really just see everything is amped up on this overall. Legibility on the hands and the markers is significantly improved. Alright, so now that we've checked all that out, I'm going to go ahead and set the Resolute down, and let's get back to just the Endeavour and focus on that piece. So what are my final thoughts on this one? Much like the Resolute, everything that I loved about the Resolute, I love about the Endeavour. The fact of the matter is, this really, in many respects, feels and wears the same as the Resolute did. It does have a different appearance to it, but it has all that same greatness to it. It has the same lightweight, the same durability. It has the same simple and clean legibility throughout, and I personally think that they're very attractive pieces. Additionally, the comfort is just fantastic. The size, I think, is excellent in terms of versatility, with having a significant enough case presence, especially with the angular cuts. I think that gives a little more wrist presence, works well on small wrist, works well on larger wrists. This one does have a little bit less dial presence, but it trades it off for the case presence. So overall, I think this will still be versatile. What are some things that I would change with this one? As with the Resolute, there's not a whole lot that I really have to complain about. I think this is a well-executed piece in all regards. Some of the things that I personally, and these are just preference things, would have liked different would have been, you can see on the dial itself, you have a double triangle. So you have the triangle in the bezel, and you have a triangle down here. I wish they would have just done just a line for that too. Not real crazy about the double bezel, and additionally, or the double triangle rather, and additionally with that bezel slight misalignment when that's fully seated there. You can see that this does, it does kind of draw extra attention to that. Additionally, for the overall, the 12 o'clock marker itself, I personally, bringing back this, I do prefer the look of the double as opposed to the one thick, but again, that's just a preference thing and just a minor element. The bezel we already talked about there, excellent bezel, almost no back play, great tactile feel, but that alignment, I want to see that perfect. We all want to see it perfect, but it's not a big deal, and it's plenty within, to me, the margin of error for that, and the fact that it can be manually adjusted easily for that with just a slight little touch over isn't a big deal. And then finally, the clasp. I mentioned there I would have preferred a double pusher, and I still would prefer a double pusher, though I do like how slim this is. It fits well into this. I love the fact that even though this is stainless steel, they matched it up with the bracelet, so they coated it in both the titanium coloration, but then also with Ultra Hex, so that should still have the durability to save you from desk crash. So finally, what is my overall feedback? So first, the price. We didn't talk about that. This one I think is still attractively priced. It's going to be coming in at launch at $359, and again, that does include the bracelet. I think you get a lot for your money, especially with this titanium package. I think it's an excellent watch. Bumping it up to retail at $459, certainly it brings itself into more of a competitive territory, but I still think, honestly, that you get a lot of watch for it. In as much as I've loved mine, I would pay it again if that was the situation I was in if I missed the launch pricing. Overall, I think, especially for the fact that this is only the second watch that this company has released, I think they've been hitting it out of the park. I hope they can keep this up. This is another home run in my opinion. I think this is going to be another wildly popular one. I know divers, certainly there's a huge market for them. Yeah, there's a lot more competitors, but I think this is an excellent job for this overall execution. So the final feedback for that is, as I mentioned earlier in the video, this is one, if you haven't tried it yet, I highly encourage you to do so. Whether you buy one, if you can find one to borrow from somebody, get this on your wrist. I think you'll like it as much as I do. It really just has a great and unique feel to it, and I appreciate you checking this out. I hope this has been helpful for you in making your decision, but I do encourage you, like I said, to give them a look. If you haven't already, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button. That helps me to produce more content. And additionally, if this video is helpful for you, if you could hit that like button, that'd be appreciated as well. And then if you're looking for another medium, you can also find me on Instagram. Thanks for watching.